Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar which is launching our autumn programme. If you haven't seen the autumn programme yet, do have a look. It's really full of great people and very important subjects for us to explore. So we're delighted this evening to have David Hayman and Chris Dolan to speak about all sorts of things actually, but one in particular is of their one-man shows. Just while you're all registering and getting comfy in your chairs, getting your glass of wine, beer ready, whatever, cup of tea, water if you're like me, then we'll just let you know that Voices for Scotland is a civic organisation. We're not attached to any political parties. And although we are independent supporting, what we're really supporting is that conversations happen across Scotland about what matters to us and what matters to you in particular, and how best we create that with either the powers that we have at the moment, or if we do eventually get the opportunity to become an independent nation, how we want that to look, because that's what we're all in this for. We're not in it for you know, a name in itself. We're here for powers with a purpose, and that's the key in this for us. So this evening you will be hearing from, you know, two very important people from from Scotland, who, you know, from theatre, from writing, from poetry backgrounds. So this is going to be a different approach to ones that we've, some of the webinars we've done before. But if any of you were lucky enough to see The Pitiless Storm, the first one-man show that David acted in and Chris wrote, then you will know how important it is to be, how fabulous it is to hear a bit more about what brought them to writing that and to the play in itself. It blew me away when I saw it. I watched it in the assembly rooms in the heady times of August 2014, and I feel emotional even as I mention that. So there's no one more excited than me to have David and Chris here this evening. So I'm hoping everyone's ready. What we're going to do is, while I'm in conversation with David and with Chris, we'll have all of you with your videos off and on mute. But once we get to the questions about 6:45, so in about 3/4 of an hour, we'll bring you all in. So we'll be able to see your fine faces. And it's a bit like putting the lights on in the audience for David and Chris. So that'll be the next phase of it. So let me introduce these fine gentlemen. I have to say, when David phoned me up the other week and we were talking, I was a wee bit starstruck. I don't know if you noticed, David, but I was definitely a bit starstruck after getting the chance to speak to you. So I'm absolutely delighted to have you here. As I say, very much about your work in the one-man shows, but also lots of your other work that we've all seen you in over the years. You're a well-kent face, and also a recognisable voice now when we've heard you. One of my friends earlier was talking about documentary you did about Benny Lynch, and would that be right? No? You're looking...
Audrey, that has escaped my memory banks
right.
in some weird way. That must have been from a past life.
It
Perhaps
must
I've done a lot of documentaries in my time, but I can't remember doing one on Benny.
right. I might have got the name wrong. She'll tell me. She'll tell me. And Chris is the man behind the words. The all that you've written around the fantastic writing around the one-man shows, but all the other writing you've done over the years as well, Chris. So thank you both for being here and for being part of this. We're really trying to find the best way to have everyone's voice heard throughout the pandemic. And, you know, it'd be nice to say now that lockdown's passed, but it actually hasn't, has it? And we're kind of slipping back into it. So I just wanted to ask you both, you know, what's it been like for you? We've heard a lot about impact on the theatre over the last few months. What's the lockdown been like for you both?
David. Audrey, this will be probably an unusual answer. I've actually quite enjoyed it. Most of my life, I spent traveling abroad, making my films and TV, and away from my wife and my sons and my family for long periods of time. You know, like the last 6 months of last year, I was in Bristol and Port Talbot in Wales shooting. Then just after Christmas, I was in Colombia for 2 months in South America making a movie. I got back the day before lockdown. So for me to be at home for 5 months is very, very unusual. I mean, it's so unusual that I usually have a bag in my bedroom that's got my passport in it and some chargers and some knickers and toiletries and stuff, so that I can go at any minute and jump on a train going somewhere. So for me, there's a huge part I've enjoyed it, just being at home and being myself and having no pressure. That has been a joy. But I'm lucky. I don't live 10 floors up in a tower block with 4 kids who cannot get out. I'm not a single mother. I have food in the fridge. I have a roof over my head. I'm comfortable. I am safe. I cannot begin to think what people have been going through. And that brings me on to the work I've been doing in my charity, Spirit Aid, during COVID. I've been quite busy during that because we got a grant from the Scottish Government, we had a grant from the Celtic Foundation to continue during the COVID to make, so that we covered over the cracks that are there. We pick up people who slip through the net, and we've been delivering about £2,000 worth of food every week to destitute families right across the west of Scotland, from Inverclyde to Stirling to North Lanarkshire, Glasgow. People are really, really desperate, and it's going to get worse. So that has been a real kind of mover for me during the lockdown, and it's so wonderful to know that we're being supported in it. We have great volunteers. We have people who are absolutely so delighted. There was one of my directors, Jim Ridley, he delivered 2 packages, about a fortnight's worth of food to an elderly woman who lived alone, high in a tower block. So he tapped on the door, and all he had heard from the other side was screaming, "Go away, I don't want you here. Don't annoy me, I'm going to call the police," all the rest of it. He said, "Look, I'm from Spirit Aid. We're here to help you. We're going to give you some supplies. Please look, I'm standing back from the door." He put the bags down, and slowly she opened up the door. When she looked down at the 2 huge supermarket bags packed full of food and treats, she dropped to her knees and burst into tears and said, "No one has ever done that for me in my life before. I'm so lonely. I'm so afraid. Thank you." So I've been busy. Chris.
Top that. Well, I'll tell you what, from our point of view, the downside from my point of view is that Davey's not been away. Normally we get shot from time to time, but I'm having to deal with his family on the phone saying, "Can you not come up with a reason for him to go away?" So yeah, like Davey, we're lucky. We stayed healthy. You know, we got a wee bit garden. It's been livable with, and it's for so many people it just isn't. I got a part-time job, and I run a master's course in television drama writing at Glasgow Caledonia University. So I've talked about old dogs learning new tricks. Being honest, the stuff that I've learned over the last 6 months. I mean, I don't know how to use Office 365 within a collaborative ultra environment and talk to 6 different people while I'm reading their scripts at the same time. So all this stuff is happening now. In a way, if you're lucky, and if you try and Dave and I were just talking before we come in here about trying to stay positive about it, and I don't. There are times when I find it really, really gets on top of me. It really does. But but just try and think, well, we just got to try and get on with it, because it's not going to go away. So we're going to have to all try and help each other to stay positive and do whatever we can. And what Dave is doing through Spirit Aid is so important.
That's a very powerful story you both tell. I have to apologise. My dog's decided she's going to come and tell her own story. One of the many issues of working with Zoom. We've met cats and dogs over the years. It's interesting you saying you've enjoyed it, David. It's something
up to a point. Yes, up to a point. I mean, there's a part which is deeply frustrating, and you want the communication, you want the camaraderie, you want the tactile nature of human existence between yourself and your family and your friends, and you desperately miss that. But
yes, there's something about hugs for me that I just think, how can we keep doing this without that human contact? And what a story you told there, David, about the amount of need that we have in our society. And I think
Audrey, it's going to get worse. I mean, I've said from the beginning, I think the virus is the earthquake. The tsunami is yet to hit. The tsunami is going to hit when furlough is over, when hundreds of thousands of people, and then already hundreds of thousands, have been thrown onto the scrap heap, and they're unemployed. They don't have a job, and they're living on ridiculous credit levels that they're given support. It's going to get worse, much worse, and I really a lot of fear for people who are desperately in need of support, and will we be able to give it to them? Yes. In fact, we have Spirit Aid. We have like 2 weeks worth of food left in our stocks, because the government support has run out, Celtic Foundation support has run out. I believe we're going to get more money from the Celtic Foundation, who are doing a wonderful job. They've actually spent something like £700,000 on good deeds during the lockdown. So they're a great example. But I worry about this winter.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I was speaking to people just this lunchtime where we're saying that very thing. And there's something about the balance of keeping us hopeful and uplifted and positive, but also recognizing the distress that's around there, the mental health issues and so on.
I think it's been interesting to watch is how different international leaders have handled it. And regardless of complete policy, and for policy is a different argument, but just to have a voice that actually you feel understands, knows, and is kind of with you. I think we're lucky in Scotland, because I do think that Nicola Sturgeon has done a really good job on that. I mean, we could all argue about all kinds of policy decisions, but that kind of genuine feeling that, that you feel as if she does give that feeling that we're all in it together. If you're, I've got so many friends and family south of the border, and their political leaders look to me as if they don't care. They really don't. They're making stuff up in the spur of the moment. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, David, that New Zealand and a whole number of places quite often.
We were talking about this the other day. Run by women.
Women. For some, I think now when we're kind of all like sick children, they kind of there's something about that more nurturing, more inclusive, calmer approach, which I think actually has been, I think in that sense in Scotland we've been lucky, because you do feel as if the leaders of the nation kind of understand, and are trying to do their best, even if they get it wrong sometimes.
It's been a very strong sense here, isn't it? And many people, have family and friends down south who've, many of them have recognised that and recognised the difference. We have been very fortunate. It's a language of feelings and compassion, isn't it, that we're hearing. Now the chat, I can see the chats filling up. I noticed a thing in the chat from Ian Black, member of the board of Voice for Scotland, who wanted to put in
Blackie, how you doing?
A wee plea for Hibs as well. So I've done it, Ian. You can hand it now. But talking of those, that a compassionate language and a passionate language, can we come a wee bit to talking about your one-man show? But before we do that, I think what we're going to do was get a little reading. from you.
Should we put it into context first, Audrey, for those
That would be great.
desperately poor souls who didn't see the plays when they were on?
Well, listen, you couldn't. It hasn't been.
No, but when they were originally on.
No, this has never been.
This one has been. It starts off as a man who's died in the war, left-winger, Labour man all his life, a trade unionist. On the eve of the referendum in 2014, he's about to be awarded an OBE. So the first half of the book. So it's about his journey coming to reject his OBE and deciding to vote yes for independent Scotland. And then it's his journey then on. And this is from the third play that we haven't performed. We'd scheduled to do it at this year's Edinburgh Festival, but the festival was cancelled. So, but we will do Bob 3 at some point.
And just on that, actually, I'd say for other people in the arts community, so many of us have lost. I've been very lucky because I got a part-time job. So many actors, writers, directors have been left with nothing, and huge, the whole Edinburgh Festival gone. So we had a national tour, and it's been very difficult for a number of people. So this is kind of bits of what the play might have become. But as we're writing it, COVID struck, and it kind of hopefully reflects itself in this.
This was supposed to be a record of Bob Cunningham's grand tour of Scotland, buses all the way, courtesy of the Scottish government. God love him. Bit of hiking. Well, there was nothing to keep me in the house, just echoes and stuff I should have thrown out years ago. But then the COVID came. So instead, a record of journeys remembered, maybe imagined, a record of Scottish dreams. Me and Ethel walking up Ben Lomond, up through the Campsies, over the Connick Hill, down into Balmaha. Stop for a pint, a wee dram, an island malt. No, a Springbank, warm reeking, rich, mountain air in your lungs, holding hands on the Macher and Harris. Where else did me and Ethel go back in the day? God, can't mind. They say there are 3 signs for loss of memory. Oh, can't you remember what the last one was? Or the first 2? Now all I do is stare at my window like everybody else. Hey, I'm lucky. I can watch the sun rising out the front, no garden, but a wee bit of balcony. There was a woman down there yesterday leading an aerobics class or something for the street. She had family or friends in the block opposite me. They've got the window open. She puts on her car radio and then she starts. She's stretching and pushing and kicking her legs up and twisting her body around and twerking her bahookie or whatever you want to call it. And all I can hear is peals of laughter for the open window. And a wee woman appears at it and says, "See by the end of this lockdown, Dolly, me and him in there, I'll be doing the Kama fucking Sutra." They knew, didn't they? We knew. We saw what was happening in China. Nothing was done. We watched what happened in Italy. They did nothing. So it spread to Spain. Nothing. We criticised Iran, the Chinese, the Germans for countering. They tell us it would go away. We saw it spread to Australia, Africa. Nothing. They knew it was coming. They knew people would die. They knew doctors and nurses and supermarket workers would all be in danger. And they did nothing. And another thing we all know, we'll all get the blame. We. Happening already. It won't be those in power, no, they're seeing a way of profiteering. It'll be you and me, the panic buyers, the hoarders, walkers in the park, young people, workers. We, the herd, didn't build up immunity, too stupid, too inferior. No, a herd they can improve the breeding of. And if we ever come out of this, what are we coming out into? Couldn't be worse than what we've got. Floods, fires, flus, filth, icebergs melting, forest fires burning. A generation of leaders with neither vision nor heart. You couldn't make it up. Bob Cunningham's grand tour of the mind, Scottish tour of the mind. Oh, the West Highland Way. Me and Ethel round Loch Lomond, over the moors and heather of Davy Balfour and Alan Breck Stewart. Neil Gow tunes whispering in the Perthshire trees. The ground rising, rising, rising towards the Highlands. the highlands, up, always forward, a dream state, a possible state.
All that.
I have to unmute myself. So I have to introduce Cara, my lurcher, who's speaking in the background there. David, that was quite something. Really powerful.
I'm a good buddy here.
Yeah. He was enjoying it. I could see him enjoying.
Oh, he doesn't usually. That's good. He's usually greeting in the back row, thinking, "Oh no, he's destroying my work of art again." Oh.
I have the camera.
He was definitely enjoying it. Yeah, that was quite something. And sorry about this. There isn't anyone else in the house to get her out the room. I'll do that in a moment. Yeah, I'm seeing many that was fabs and lots of rounds of applauses in people's own homes. Brilliant, powerful, and prescient, says Ian, and absolutely. So you really caught the emotion of that time. You know, the when you could see it start to unwind, or the pandemic to come our way, and yet nothing was happening. It was bemusing, really, wasn't it?
Yes, and all that we can praise, you know, Nicola Sturgeon and the Scottish Government, quite rightly, because Nicola has done a superb job of leadership. All governments in the United Kingdom are desperately to blame. They knew, and they did nothing. And that will never change. How they've handled it since, the rosettes may very well go to Nicola Sturgeon, and well deserved, but all governments are at fault for sitting on their arses and sitting on their hands and doing nothing while they watch this virus spread across the world.
Yep, and I think, you know, there are some reasons for that, and there are excuses that will have to be heard at some point.
Oh yeah,
reasons
we have to ask serious questions, Audrey. This will never happen again, never, ever. And we live in an interconnected world, and pandemics are just now will have to be part of our lives, and how we cope with them, and how we prepare for them, and how we protect our people. We have to ask those questions.
Yes, we do.
46,000 deaths, one of the highest in Europe.
Yeah, and you know, that has to be in some ways connected to what we were talking about before, to the poverty and the inequality in our land as well. If you look at you know, where the deaths have happened, it's in the Black and minority ethnic communities and in the deprived communities. So we can't turn our backs on that, absolutely. We need to hear this play. I was thinking, oh my goodness.
We're determined you will.
Eventually.
Good. And I think you've got loads of people queuing up to come already. And a few people mentioning those bits of Scotland that you spoke of, that certainly I went, oh, Connacht Hill looking down on Loch Lomond. You know, some of these...
Half an hour from Glasgow?
Yeah, I know. I'm not even that long from further away, you know. We've got a wonderful land if we only... if we'll get the chance to be able...
Only we owned it, aye, and it belonged to us.
If only we had it,
and it didn't belong to the chinless wonders who just go shooting innocent birds out the air. Aye, I know, it would be great. We do have a wonderful land.
Good point.
So when you're creating these, and can I say to people who are listening in, keep putting your questions into chat and into the Q&A. That's what we want.
It's nice to hear from...
Yeah, because we're going to hear from others, and you know what I'll do is get the dog out while we're doing a bit of that. But when you're writing this, what's your process?
These are very special. These aren't like the way I would normally write. I mean, theatre and television, which I've written quite a lot of, are very, very collaborative, but actually not as collaborative as this. The whole start of this was Davey and I speaking after a Radical Scotland conference in 2013, presumably. and saying we ought to do something about it. So, I mean, the entire idea, the creation of Bob has been, it's actually a three-way process. There's myself and Davey's son, Davey Jr., Davey Hayman Jr., who's the director of all the plays, fantastic director. And it's kind of been wonderfully collaborative. So, you know,
it's not like going to work.
No.
It's just a real joy. I mean, we just toss ideas around between the three of us. We try something out, see if it works. I will do stuff for Chris. He'll come back and he'll change it, rewrite it. We'll add in something will happen during the day or something in the news. And we think, hey, you know, Grenfell happened and we threw that in. What do we do with the unemployed? Or what do we do with immigrants? So we chuck them in tower blocks and burn them. You know, it's like, bang, so we're trying to keep up to date and changing. It's a great process.
It's part of the design that, you know, we've done 2 so far and 3, and each time is Bob in a particular situation in the here and now. So you can have a certain amount of script, but we always leave gaps. So we now become quite proficient at it. We leave gaps of various bits where what happened literally that day, you know, we can actually, Davey will just quite often just find a way of working it in. So yeah, in a way it's been an absolute joy to do, because I've never done theatre quite like this before. It is genuinely media theatre. If you're watching it in Dundee on the Tuesday, it's going to be pretty different than you watch it in Aberdeen on the Wednesday. Because different things have happened. So it's been fun to do. And it's also, I think, an act of kind of shared passion, because you know, it's a place for us to actually explore, you know, our own passions, but also ask ourselves questions, quite hard questions. You know, why we think what we think and what we think should happen.
And also, if you remember, Audrey, we followed each performance with a discussion with the audience over the issues raised in the play, and that was fascinating. I mean, we've had wonderful memories. I mean, good God, from Miners Welfare Club to, you know, a high school and on Isla, to on Islands of Skye, to here, memorable, to Oranmore, one of the most extraordinary evenings of our lives, where art and life and politics all came together in one piece of theatre. And they were hanging off the rafters, and it was just astounding. That was 2 nights before the referendum.
Oh, wow.
One of the most memorable, it was the single most memorable night of theatre.
And we thought we'd won at the referendum. When I say we, I mean Davey and me. We thought we had completely convinced the nation. We
had turned the nation around because we could chart it, because we did the play we toured over 6 weeks or something, and we started off the Edinburgh Festival. The audience were very much split 50-50 in Edinburgh, and then as we went on, you could feel it rising, getting higher and higher and higher. By the time we got to Stirling, we thought, we're going to win 80%, hands down, no problem.
Yeah. And then the truth hit.
Yes.
So I've noticed one of the questions, and I'll sneak it in just now, was, you know, when you see the way it's shifting, you know, that 55-45 is now in the other direction. What's your thoughts about it? What are you thinking?
Personally, I think, I mean, I know there's a split. Neither of us will be members of the Scottish National Party. So we're completely just people out there. And for me, it's always been a question of independence rather than nationalism.
Me too.
So I think personally that the way things are going, you know, that with all the difficulties that we're facing, with COVID in particular, with the madness of Brexit and now the unbelievable illegality of what the British government are intending to do if they actually do it, is just the most breathtaking. It's Trumpism. I mean, we've really gone all the way down that line. I think probably it is right to kind of let it grow. But I think if Brexit happens, a no-deal Brexit happens, and if they do break international law, I think Scotland's going to be independent sooner than we thought, and we need to get out. So I'm halfway between, you know, taking your time and not rushing the thing politically, because you could lose it again. But also, you know, if that happens after Christmas, then you do going to think, you know, well, we actually do have to get out if we want to make anything of this. And it's a shame for all our brothers and sisters and comrades and friends and family in England and Wales, but somebody somewhere in the British Isles has got to do something. And we've got a chance of doing it.
Well, that comes out in the bit I'll read at the end. Audrey, from my point of view, I have always deep in my heart wanted 60% minimum.
Yeah.
I do not want us to win by 1%. I don't want us to win by 1 vote. I don't want us to win by half a dozen votes or 100 votes. What's the point? We're going to have a country driven down the middle. It has to be wholehearted. The vast majority of the people of this country must passionately want it for it to work. If it's 51-49. That's going to be a hell of a journey to nationhood. So I've got more patience than Chris. I want that 55% or the 56% to build to 60. And once that stays concrete, and as Chris says, the events in the world and what that idiot in the number 10 is doing, I think it's going to be pretty soon we're going to see independence. And I can't wait. Can't wait.
Yeah, when we launched Voices for Scotland, Elaine C. Smith, who did an earlier webinar.
Who did you say?
You've not heard of her?
No, I haven't heard of her, no. No.
She'll get you back for it.
She will.
She will.
You know, Elaine said, yeah, it has to be 60% and more. That's what we need to be aiming for. And we've seen what, you know, 2% difference makes with Brexit and a divided country over that. Not that that's made any difference to the people who've been, who've taken us further forward. The other percentage have just been ignored, but I don't want a split country like that. I want us to be in a situation where we've all thought, you know what, it's time. When you did the first show, that was after you'd done the Radical Independence convention.
Yeah, that was in the, I think that was in the November, and we did the show in the summer. It started in July, late July, August, at the festival.
Yeah.
Leading up to the vote in September.
Did, you know, a lot of people at that time, and I think we're in a different place now, but I'd just been the leader in a charity in Scotland, and, you know, people, I had left it, so I was able to come out and be a bit more open about what I believed, but people would whisper to me, I'm with you, but don't say anything in public. Did you find, did people change towards you? Did it change your careers at all doing this kind of work? Or, you know, did it have an influence at all?
On personally, no. One way or the other, I didn't feel any. I mean, there was lots and lots of debate, and I've like all of us, I'm sure we get friends who we respect completely, who have taken the other tack. I think there's been maybe other people have different experiences. My experience in 2014 actually was that we showed ourselves to be a grown-up nation, and I think one egg was thrown. And even that is slightly questionable, but
at the right man.
But I do think that actually it was a relatively reasonable. I mean, I hear other people, particularly from the no side, who feel differently about it, and that saddens me, I have to say. And I really do hope if we get another independence referendum that it will be done as reasonably and as rationally as we possibly can. And I think it's the way forward, is to be just completely rational and not get but I never felt, and I felt that everybody, even the people who were no voters, I didn't feel that people stopped commissioning me or commissioned me more or whatever. What I think we did notice was in the audience is that people, and it happened quite often, would say before the play they weren't convinced, and after they were, and that happened in both plays actually. Now whether that dissipated after a day or two and they went back to being no again, I don't know, but we did feel as if we did change people's minds. We did,
And what changes in it? Why do you think that happens? What's different from what was happening across the country at that time, or even in the debates on TV? What made it change people's minds, do you think?
The power of theatre and the power of the argument.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah.
It's clarified itself for me in the 4 years since. A good friend of mine who was a no voter came along to the play and actually did that thing, which I think it dissipated. I know it dissipated a couple of days later, but she said to me that actually she'd now understood the arguments and was going for me. I remember Davey complaining to me about the first play, the one you saw, Audrey, and the 45% of the play, more than that actually, about 75% of the play were arguments against. It was Bob wrangling with himself, and a lot of it was actually all the arguments against, and then finally coming. So one person in particular felt that and said that's good, but then obviously it did dissipate entirely, because a couple of days later, she then changed her Facebook sign to the Union Jack. And it was the first time that I realised, and I've kind of, it's a bit of a thing for me, that actually, very weirdly and ironically, a vote for Scottish independence for me is a vote against nationalism. It's against that kind of English British nationalism. It's I feel, and certainly independence that I'm really keen on is that one that's not particularly nationalist. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Scotland, but so do non-independence voters love Scotland. That's not an issue. It's not whether you love Scotland or not. It's about whether or not we in this nation can actually do a better job. And I think in that sense, that I'm more terrified by that other kind of nationalism. And in some ways I feel as if, really strangely, a vote for Scottish independence is a vote against nationalism. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes. We're international in outlook, I think we are.
Stick that line in for the next play.
Yeah, so there's a nice bit of dialogue going on there. I think what I'm going to do now is bring in some other questions. I think it would be good to hear from the faceless others out there. So, Clara, can you bring everyone into view now? I'm just going to go back to gallery view and see. Yeah, so Clara's just asking everyone to turn their cameras on. I'm just going to have a look at some of the questions. Right.
See what I did now, can I?
Yeah.
I've got a new book coming out.
Oh.
Yeah.
2 months' time, I've been past that from the release. But
It's a beautiful, wonderful, utterly exotic, charming book. You'll just get lost in it. I read it in 2 sittings.
Oh, thank you, David.
I think it's a beaut.
But it's basically it's about a cycle across Spain and about growing older and about memory and stuff. But it's also about the question of Catalonia and Scotland. I talk quite a lot about that.
Right.
I just want to little point that one of my Catalan friends, a really wonderful young one called Dania, who works with me here in Glasgow as a writer, fantastic writer. And she says that, I think at the point we are now, it is a mistake to reduce pro-independence to nationalism. And one of the things that we noticed when we were talking, I said, while this debate goes on, we're seeing videos of mass marches in both Barcelona and Scotland, both sets of independence seekers flying flags. Flags frighten me. They're reminiscent of Nuremberg, of tricolours and Union Jacks vying for attention in the streets of Belfast in the Rangers and Celtic games. I've seen stars of David flying provocatively like jabbing fingers at Palestinian areas and towns. The chilling flag of ISIS. The flags outside Westminster wielded by red-faced men spitting mad. So yeah, I kind of worry about that kind of nationalism.
Yeah. Actually, before we go any further as well, David, there was somebody wanting to know how to be able to donate to Spirit Aid. So, and I'm
sure if you're on Facebook, there's a Spirit Aid Facebook page. There's a link.
Right.
And if you go into spiritaid.org, there should also be a link to through PayPal or whatever. Don't quite understand how it works, but that is a way of doing it.
Thanks. Oh, someone's left themselves off. Can you mute yourselves, please? Okay, that's great. Right. So there's a question here from Annie Reid. Annie, can I bring you in to ask your question if you're still online?
Hi, Shirley.
Oh, great.
Hello, Annie. Hi.
Hi, how are you? My question was really how I feel sometimes that we're kind of existing in echo chambers. Because I remember I spoke to you, David, outside the Blue Lamp on the night before.
Aberdeen. Aye.
It was palpable, as you said before, the feeling that it's actually going to happen.
Were you in the pub that night?
Yes.
It was another great. That was the last performance of that. The night before the referendum, you could feel it.
And it was absolutely incredible. And I asked you then, do you really think we're going to do it? And we both kind of did. But I think it's partly because you're surrounded all the time by people who
folk of like mind,
the same as we do.
Aye.
And I'm not sure how we open the doors to those echo chambers without shouting, because folk didn't like the shouting.
That's why Chris and I wanted to do it creatively. Rather than get up in a soapbox, we thought, well, let's do it through the power of theatre, create a character and then create a story and do it that way. So you've got the drama, you've got and Chris's genius is that he brings in, wonderful other sides to the story, the personal side, the tender side, the loving side, his relationships. So it becomes a really, it's just a richer experience. And I'm a performing artist, Chris is a writer. So we both understand the power of art and creativity.
And we do try in those plays, Manny, to actually do talk about the other side. I said earlier, we had Juliet reading a poem by somebody at a night for this play, which was anti-independence. I'm completely, I agree with you entirely. We're not going to win unless we convince people, and we're not going to convince people just by going, we're right and you're wrong. People's very genuine concerns, worries, different points of view, and I think we have to engage with that. So like every way we can, and our plays are absolutely not that kind of, independence. They're not, they're about, look, here are the arguments.
But I would have said that certainly by the time you got to Aberdeen, and maybe it was different earlier in the run, but certainly by the time you got to Aberdeen, that room was full of people who were already going to vote yes. And that's the bit that...
Aye. But Annie, that changed throughout the course of the tour. In Edinburgh, as I said, I reckon the audience were 50-50. But then you get an international audience at the Edinburgh Festival anyway, even for the Fringe. And then throughout the course of the tour, I reckon it got to more and more, we were getting like 90% would be yes voters. They just wanted that last bit of encouragement and support and excitement, I guess.
Yeah, but we needed to be speaking to somebody else.
We do, yeah. But you can't select who comes to see a show,
Yeah.
You put the show on and hope.
How we do it.
Well, we'll keep working on that, Annie. Absolutely. Yeah. How do we get other people in? Absolutely.
That's far we need to go.
Okay. Thanks, Annie.
That's one of the challenges for Voices for Scotland as well. And I think, speaking, for me, hearing the power of the play was much more, it really was kind of life-changing for me, and I'd already made my mind up, but it was still in that kind of impact.
For many people, for many people, it was a confirmation of what they felt and what they wanted to do, and for them that was an important step, just to have that final bit of confirmation before they put their cross on a bit of paper. That's what excited me. A lot of people were just pushed over the line, or enticed over the line.
The other thing I think is interesting is for me, that, and again to reflect what Annie's saying too, and for all of us, I was still in the balance not much more than a year before, and it was all that stuff about everything else, as we did in the play really. And there's a couple things changed. My children changed my mind. They were fantastic. But I went to see, I went along out of interest to one of these kind of sessions, and Karine Polwart stood up. And she was good no matter what, but she said something which completely made all the difference to me. She said, listen to other people here who seem to be 100% sure. I'm not. I'll never be 100% sure about anything. I'm maybe 80, 90, and that's enough. That's enough to act and to decide, well, you have to actually do something. But to allow that, and I loved that. I loved the fact that, okay, I don't have to be completely and utterly, I can see, there might be slight problems and understand other people's difficulties. I love Karine Polwart's point. I'm 80, 90%, and that will do.
Yeah.
To get that across.
She has such a gift of communication, has Karine Polwart, doesn't she? Yes, yeah, that's and hearing her sing some of the songs that we're all familiar with is enough to.
Oh, our Celtic Songbook.
Yes.
That's a wonderful album, yeah.
It's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. Now, do you want to put your hand up if you'd like to ask a question? And I'll have a wee look at what else has come in the chat. Yeah, there's Jane Jones got her hand up there. Jane, do you have a question?
I was just really impressed by the fact you have these discussions after the play, because you can see something that really inspires you or challenges you, and then you can just go home and mull it over. But I think you know, having a public discussion always seems to me really, really crucial. Is that what you feel?
I wanted that from the very beginning because I think it's important. I think theatre should be, well, art should be a two-way process. And because you're dealing with contemporary, important and alive issues, you don't just do it, get the applause and then just disappear and go to the bar and get a pint of Guinness. I think it's really, really important to have that discussion with the audience, no matter how limited, but you get a flavour of it. And that became part of the, I think it became part of the evening, didn't it, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Chris was at many of the discussions, as many as he could make. So it was that two of us responding to the audience. And some of those were remarkable, weren't they?
And it was, and challenging debates, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people put in the spot. It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. So yeah, I agree with you entirely. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Stuart wanted to come in there.
Yeah, I was just interested in the views of both you guys who make up Bob, as to how do you think Bob would be looking after all his soul searching and coming to independence. How would he be viewing what's happened with the Scottish Parliament since that time?
What's happening in the Parliament?
No, in the country, and what the Parliament has done for independence.
Yeah, I think it's kind of that last reading, that first reading that David did there. And, you know, I think Bob will always, as we do, question. He's not likely to join any party very soon. I've always thought, I think we've always thought, David, that Bob, the day independence is declared, would immediately rejoin the Labour Party. That's what we think Bob would do. And I think he would have a lot of criticism, to be honest. But I think he would probably think that, you know, that the criticism is there and you have to keep on criticizing, keep on pushing. But I don't think he'd necessarily be deeply unhappy. I think he would kind of reflect what we said in there, that you know, we're moving slowly, difficult times, and everything else in some kind of direction. Yeah, that's the next play. That's what I've got to write. That's what I've got to decide, basically. Thank you.
So we have to watch play 3 whilst you're also writing play 4. We would have thought so much would have changed in this time as well. It's really quite remarkable, isn't it? Yeah. Any other questions or just like points of discussion you'd like to have? Heather, you want to say yours? Yeah.
Hi, it's really just an observation, you know. I was involved in the first Indie campaign, and you know, we trained as Yes ambassadors, and what they wanted was you to run a positive campaign, focusing on all the good things that are going to happen in an independent Scotland. But I think for a lot of people that was too happy clappy and pie in the sky, and of course fast forward to now, and it seems to be all the negative things that are actually turning people to yes. You know, the Tory government's obsession with Brexit and all the fallout from that, you know, the bill to take powers away from Holyrood, which of course we knew were going to happen, but you kind of kept, you know, keep it positive, keep it positive. But it seems to be all the negative things that have transpired that are actually turning people to yes. And you know, that combined of course with Nicola's excellent handling of, you know, the day-to-day thing and the calm way and the honest way that she's speaking to people about you know, the pandemic. So maybe, you know, we need to be a wee bit more realistic and not just accentuate the positive. We need to you know, sort of be sort of a wee bit more emphasis on the negatives as well, because I think that's really what's turning people towards independence.
This has turned out great in a way I didn't expect. Between you guys, you're writing the next play. I'm writing all this down. Good point. Yes, absolutely.
But it is a good point. But don't you think we had to have the nice cushy things to begin with, like free education for our kids, and you know, and free prescription and free bus travel and care and all that? Those were important things to give people confidence. And then during this really tricky time, that's the negatives have just been enough to then push us up to 55, 56%. I agree with you. I think it's a tricky balance to get, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, it was always the emphasis was on, you know, we could do this, we could do that, you know, and this will happen and whatever. And it was easy for people to say, well, you know, we really can't afford that. Where's the money going to come from? And, you know, all this sort of thing, you know, and I think what's happened since has, you know, all the things that we knew would happen have come to pass. And, you know, the Brexit thing, I think, you know, the fallout from that, I think that's a big negative, but it has turned a lot of people's minds around. You know, I think there was no way we could have foreseen that they were going to take us out of Europe. You would have needed a crystal ball for that, I should imagine. But
well, most of my work is in England, and I knew long before that vote the way it was going to go.
Really?
Yep. About 80% of my work is I'm in England all the time, so I was surrounded by people who I knew were going to vote for Boris Johnson and knew they were going to vote for Brexit. Yeah. So it didn't surprise me. I was still shocked. In my heart, I was still shocked. You know, it's
So I think a touch of realism, you know, is not a bad thing, and a touch of negativity isn't such a bad thing, really, looking back.
It's interesting, Heather, isn't it? Because we didn't want to do that.
No, that's right.
We wanted to keep on the positives. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's something about what you do at each stage of the way, you know, maybe to get people over a certain point, mm-hmm. to be showing them what has happened. But then to make that step, for me, I have to have hope. I couldn't do it just to run away. I would need to know what I wanted to run to.
Do you not think it's maybe something to do with the Scots psyche, that, you know, the doerness and the, you know, the you know, just the it's going to go wrong, and, you know,
that's
that comes from watching supporting our football.
Probably. But, you know, I think it's something to do with our psyche, that, you know, you expect everything to go wrong. Yeah. You know, something to do with, because it just has always done in Scotland. You know, you didn't get your hopes too high, and
get above your station. Yeah,
exactly. That's it. Didn't get above yourself.
You know, the wonderful Alistair Reid poem, when he's walking down a road in St Andrews somewhere, it's a beautiful day. And his poem goes, it was the most beautiful day, the sky was the bluest blue, the grass was the greenest green. And down towards comes a little old lady, and she speaks to him in the voice of ancient generation. She says, aye, but we'll pay for it, we'll pay for it, we'll pay for it.
Yeah, sounds familiar. We've got a question here from Marjorie Burns. Marjorie, do you want to
Hi, thanks, Audrey. Chris, I'm very happy to co-author your next work as long as I can get some royalties.
Hi, Marjorie.
My issue is that I've been finding it really, really helpful to hear people distinguishing between nationalism and independence. Yep. And I'm very concerned about what you would normally associate with nationalist sentiments that seems to be on the rise. And I agree with some of what Heather said. I wonder how can we help people to move more towards the pro views that go with independence and away from the anti views that seem to be associated with nationalism? And for example, do you think it's time for the SNP to change their name?
Yeah, I would. Take nationalists out of it for sure. The Scottish Party, whatever they want to call themselves, it wouldn't be a bad start.
I've always said I couldn't join a party that's got the word national in it. So it's always going to be a stumbling block for me. But I mean, you know, that's their party. I'm not a member of that party. You know, in a way, also because it's taken away their soul or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think the main point is right. I'm hoping that if we do have another referendum, that the debate is kept along the lines of independence. You know, because I do worry, you know, there are people of mine who I know are non-independence voters, but love Scotland every bit as much. I know and understand it every bit as much as I do. I mean, actually, a very large amount of the Gaelic community didn't vote for yes. You know, so, and I think it's to recognise that. So I think you're absolutely right. And I'm hoping that the debate will be more and more about, you know, one of the most wonderful things I think about Scotland at the moment is this revolutionary idea that to be a Scot is to live, work and pay your taxes in Scotland. It's not about ethnicity, you know, and that's our Scotland, isn't it?
Yep.
You know, that's the Scotland we want, and I think we got. I think most of the people working for the cause of independence, I think most people think that. But yeah, you're right.
But also, this is also taking place in a very divisive world. I mean, lots of countries are becoming more and more nationalistic. The borders are going up, the walls are going up. You know, it will be very difficult.
And it is weird being part of that when
you
I feel that what we're doing is actually about joining things. I want to rejoin Europe. I want Europe to be back together again. I certainly don't want to make an enemy of the rest of the UK. It is weird at a time when you're worrying about things splintering that actually you're in one argument locally where you are doing something similar, but you think you're doing it for different reasons. Yeah, it's difficult. Just that idea that Scotland, a couple of years ago, we had a party for my son and my daughter. And we had friends come up from Devon, and then my son decided he wanted everybody to wear kilts, and I know nothing but kilts. So I'm sure I told you this, Davey. So we took this family of Devon lads and the mum and dad, and I found a shop online, and it was in Possil, so one of the poorest parts of Scotland, of Glasgow. And we went there, and the two women that ran this shop were very, very heavily accented Polish gay couple. And what they didn't know about kilts wasn't worth knowing. And it was one, I won't put it on because it'll sound racist to put on the accent, but in a very Polish accent they were saying, this is the Prince Charles and this is the whatever. And I remember turning around to people saying, that's my Scotland. I love that, you know. The perseverance of the culture and nothing else, but two Polish women. I thought that's what we want. And yeah, I think it's trying to promote those ideas of a really inclusive.
Well, I bought a tartan face mask today in town, and I was served by a Polish woman.
Brilliant. Yeah.
No, we have plenty of tartan. Over there is the tartan mask.
We've got a question now. We've got a question now from David Maxwell. Where are you, David? Can I see? Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, you're on.
Hello.
I'm Angie, not David, but we're obviously together. I just wanted to go back to very briefly to what Heather said about the negatives. I've been working on a couple of close friends I knew were fairly firmly no voters in 2014, and they were sitting on the fence when Brexit went against us. But the thing that really made the difference was the prorogation of Parliament. And I got Facebook messages almost simultaneously when that news broke from these two folks saying, that's it, I'm voting yes. And I think these sorts of cataclysmic political events can work for us. Just wanted to make the point.
Good point. Absolutely.
That was just an abuse of power.
Totally was. Yeah.
More coming.
Yes.
So I think we can't let go of that. Yes, the positive stuff is so important, and I feel very positively towards the prospect. plenty of people who are are more persuaded by the fear, the dangers, the negativity as well. So we, I think what Heather said was it was all sweetness and light, and how wonderful it's going to be when we're independent. And that's not the only thing that is important, I feel.
Well said.
Finish.
Yep.
Finish.
I think we just lost Audrey for a moment.
All right.
Oh, bye, Audrey.
I hope Cara didn't fight her way back in and distracted her. So I'll just take over for her. I think our next question was coming from, wait, let me make sure. Is it Jean? Yes, just unmute yourself.
Hi, hello.
Jean, hello. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. It's lovely to be able to do this.
Where are you?
And not go anywhere. I'm in Shetland. I'm at home.
Good.
Yeah, but just an observation, Chris, and it is about this word nationalism and nationalist. And you said you couldn't be a member of any party with nationalist in it. Well, it doesn't have nationalist in it, and I think it's really important. It's important that we constantly do this, because you will never hear a BBC presenter or interviewer or a member of the Labour Party or any of the Unionist parties ever talk about the Scottish National Party, ever. They will always refer to the Scottish Nationalist Party. And I can't remember where I read it, but I think it was George Orwell who said, you know, particularly about Germany and because extremists will compare us to the Nazis, you know, in terms of that kind of nationalism.
I think
who said that you can't, it's a very different thing to have a nationalist or a national party in a country that's already independent.
Yes.
And I think it's a really, really good point, that we're not independent. We're actually wanting to celebrate the nation and govern ourselves. And there's a big difference.
I'm pretty sure I said, if this is recorded, I'm pretty sure I did say the word national in it, because I'm very, very aware of that. And I think Cunningham Graham also made the same argument way back in the early days of it. It should be the National Party of Scotland.
That said, I agree that they should change the name. I mean, I'm not a member of the Scottish National Party.
I'm not a member of the party, and I don't really have a problem with them calling themselves that. But yeah, it just does. I think for that very reason, Jean, you're right. People keep hearing nationalist, even though it says national. But it's just a personal thing. But you know.
And just, I suppose my question too is just to say that it seems to me that, and it always has done. I kind of I do have I detest what's happening in Westminster just now, and the system and the House of Lords and everything that Boris Johnson is doing, and maybe even more so Mr. Cummings. But I still hold on to the argument to make the argument of why Scotland should be independent. You know, and you're absolutely right. I agree with you. It's about people who live here. You pay your taxes here. Therefore, you have a vote and a right to be here. And I love the fact that George Galloway is suggesting to Michael Gove that all the Scots, because that's the argument that if they keep that up, I think they'll be brilliant. If all the Scots in living in England should have a vote in the next referendum, and I just wonder whether he thinks that all the English people living in Scotland shouldn't then. Would that be the equivalent? Anyway, I absolutely support the fact that it's nothing to do with our nationality. Whether you're a Scot if you live here in Scotland. Anyway, that's all I had to say. And good to see you both.
Lovely to see you. Take care, stay safe.
Yeah. We've got Audrey back, but actually, I'm just going to come in there for a second, because I am actually from Germany, and I moved to Scotland about 8 years ago, and I came here first as a student. And so that was just before the first referendum, and I didn't know much about independence. And when I first learned about it, I was quite, I'm not sure, very much with that German perspective in my mind. And then once later on, I was fully pro-independence. I remember I was back in Germany and I told my dad about it, and I was like, I'm pro-Scottish independence. And my dad, he's a councillor for the German Green Party in my hometown, and he went very quiet, very, very quiet. And then he just got his laptop out and then started Googling. And then he didn't speak to me for an hour and read everything around Scottish independence because he thought I turned right wing. And he moved to Scotland, became radicalized or something. And I think this is just like, that is the problem with the word nationalism sometimes, especially for me still as a German. It's something I need to be very, very careful I speak about and explain when I'm back home. But it's actually quite easy to explain the difference because Scotland is so completely different. And it's the complete opposite of being a nationalistic state as, you know, Germany was. So yeah, I just thought I'll give my tuppence worth because it was something that's quite close to my heart.
Thank you, Clara.
That's such an important thing to say, Clara, and thanks for keeping the fort while my laptop died. We'll edit out all these bits, the dog, the laptop going, we'll edit it out afterwards.
Yeah. I think we had another question as well from Dolly, just so that Dolly knows it.
Okay, Dolly, you're here, so it's Dolly Maxwell as well, is it? Yeah. Can we hear your question?
What?
Or it's Dolly McLennan, right.
I'll try to unmute you. Oh. So, yeah.
Is that all right? Can you hear me?
You're on now, Dolly.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. It was a strange one for me because I was brought up in a Labour household. And my father was the agent for Malcolm K. Macmillan, who was the 35 years the Labour candidate for the Western Isles. This is a way back when I was a child. And when I came to Edinburgh, I was part of the Wendy Wood scene and all that sort of thing. And the Radio Free Scotland, broadcasting from attics in different parts of the city, and the Bowness Rebels and all that. But I never joined the SNP, though I was a patriot. And what I was doing when we were in the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, with the tribute to Stag and the Black Oil, we went upstairs, and this man hugged me and he was crying. And he said, "What a nationalist you must be." And I said, no, because I can never equate nationalism with socialism. And he said, remember what Connolly said? And I said, what in particular? And he said, a nation, first of all, has to be free to make its own decision. And I joined the SNP on the 4th of July, 1974. But I've said all along, and I said it the other night, I've always seen the Scottish National Party, not IST, as a movement for self-determination. And what's bothering me at the moment is and I'm sad for the situation of the Labour Party in Scotland.
Yeah.
And quite a lot of even the MSPs in the Labour Party realise it, but the leadership doesn't. And the only way the Labour Party can blossom again in Scotland is when it's independent. Yep. And we can all be red, green, or blue, or yellow, or whatever. And that's my comment, and I hope you agree with me.
Absolutely.
We couldn't agree with you more, Dolly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Words of wisdom.
Well said, Delina. Yeah. There's a lot of resonance in the room, if we can describe ourselves as a room for that. Is anyone else, if you want to just put your hand up or put the hand up on the shares, the chat screen, then I'll know that you want to come in. Anything that you would like to say now, sort of David and Chris, after hearing some of these conversations?
I found this really encouraging. Lots of different voices, lots of different ages, lots of different parts of Scotland, lots of different people from different backgrounds. I'll tell you one thing that I haven't noticed this evening. one of my favourite moments in the 2014 referendum. I have no idea who organised it. I just happened to be walking through George Square, and I heard Scottish songs being sung, and really kind of real Scotland the Brave and things like that, but being sung in a really, really over-the-top English accent. And I went up, and it was English Scots for Independence.
Wow.
And I thought it was fantastic. That was very funny what they did. It was really funny. It was really witty, singing these songs in their really outrageous London accent, and it was brilliant. And I think that's another kind of challenge for us is Scots who maybe don't feel as Scottish. So I'm thinking of BAME groups. I'm thinking of different groups who maybe need to be brought into this discussion more. English Scots, absolutely, we need to feel part of this whole process. It's not about ethnicity. So I think the kind of discussion we've had this evening is actually very encouraging. It's all about being rational and reasonable and inclusive and bringing people.
And these discussions should be happening all the time.
Yeah.
You know, not once every few weeks. They should be part and parcel of our discourse, you know, of our daily lives, where we discuss and shape the future we want to live in, the country we want to live in,
And certainly in the run-up to the last referendum, that was some of the parts I loved, the discussions and the robust disagreements even within the same camp of people wanting independence. As you say, all the different colours that they might support after we win independence, but really talking about the things that mattered. And that's what we're trying to do in Voices for Scotland. We have these kind of bigger webinars every few weeks, but in between times, each Thursday evening, if you just like a good blether and a chat and look at what's happened this week, or, you know, can't believe what's been said, what do we think, then come and join us, because we're going to be here. And that goes to yourselves, David and Chris. I know you're busy men.
That's a great invitation,
do join us anytime, because there's some great discussions happened already, and there's more to come. If there's no more questions and answers,
can I take a moment to go for a pee?
Certainly.
Excuse me, my bladder dictates the course of my life.
Yeah, I know that.
Really well. The hands of Mr. Dolan.
I've got the floor to myself. Oh my God.
You can say what you like now, Chris. There's Eddie Morrison there with his hand up.
Talk about this new.
No, let's get Eddie on. Yeah, what's Eddie got to say?
We need to unmute you, Eddie. So, Clara, can you help with that? That's it. Your floor is yours.
Hi, how you doing? Eddie Morrison, Peace Bride. I'm just interested to know what people think of the Electoral Commission today turning down the Alliance for Independence and to join the officially join the debate as an official party, and whether or not there is any concern. The reason why they've said that is because they feel that some voters may misunderstand or be led into believe that the Alliance for Independence speaks for the broad church, for want of a better word, of the independence movement. And my concern, I have to say, is that whereas I understand perhaps a need for trying to find an umbrella group to cover the whole area of independence as opposed to nationalism, as we've discussed earlier. But isn't this an example? Isn't this a danger of us? There's the last thing we need just now is another party to be thrown into the mix, which will undoubtedly cause an awful lot of distraction, as far as I'm concerned. Whether you like the SNP or you don't like the SNP, the fact of the matter is they've got us to where we are just now. And I personally do not welcome another party perhaps muddying the waters about what we're trying to achieve, particularly when that particular branch of new party may contain individuals that turn out to be divisive.
That's a really big question there, Eddie. Chris, I don't know, it's kind of putting you in the spot to answer that one, but I wonder if other people...
All right, Eddie likes to put me in the spot all the time, so it is a chance for me to push my new book again. Eddie's in this book as well. Eddie and I cycled across Spain together last year with another friend.
Oh, wow.
And it's our thoughts on that whole process. I think Eddie's right. Weirdly, after the conversation with everybody, Jean, everybody else, that, you know, I've got this problem, and I'm a party called the Scottish National Party, that, you know, the Alliance for Independence, I like that name better. But I think right now, I think you're going to split the vote. I think you're going to create, I think what Eddie says is exactly right. I think, you know, things going steady at the moment. I think there are lots of people around the Scottish National Party who are not members, but who are perfectly happy to be around that major ship that's moving forward. So Eddie's just asking Davy about a new party being formed called Alliance for Independence, and isn't that just going to split the vote to make muddy the waters? Yes. So, yeah, I personally, even though I'm not a member, I think Eddie's right that actually, you know, it's just going to complicate matters and split the vote.
Yeah. Agree.
Any other viewpoints on that? When, you know, we've discussed it in the board of Voices for Scotland as well. Jane, did you want to come in there? And Delina? Yeah.
Sorry, Audrey, it's not quite on that point. So if somebody wants to follow that, I was just going to ask something different.
Okay, well, I'm going to let one last question go, because we're coming to the end, and we've got a nice piece from one of the one-man shows to finish on today. So, but go, I don't want to stop your question, Jane. So you go ahead, ask your question, and then we'll
observation as well was, I was thinking when people earlier were talking about the negatives coming through, or that was helping the kind of cause, what I felt was the negatives were this whole horrible pandemic has kind of revealed like a skeleton underneath of what we really care about. So things like people helping each other, public services, you know, all that kind of stuff. I think that's what's come up and made us realise how that's been kicked aside often by Westminster, actually. And I think the other interesting thing that I did love about Sturgeon, and I'm not actually myself an SNP member or any party member at the moment, was the way that when she was talking, she very much emphasised this kind of, I feel, a Scottish thing about, you know, you might want to go out in your car and walk up the Highlands and you'll be fine. But actually, if everybody did that, there'd be trouble and there'd be more infection. So it was a real moment for me about understanding the individual against the collective and the kind of solidarity to help everybody. And I love that. I felt quite kind of proud.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
Yeah,
She makes us feel important. She makes us feel that we've been cared for and we've been looked after, and they're doing the best that they can to support us.
There's a real honesty and integrity, I think, in what you said. But I would recognise from what you said there, Jane, that sense of, you know, we want to support the collective and not just, you know, be self-serving through it as well.
I think what has really come out during the virus and the lockdown, just like community streets. I mean, neighbours coming together. I know more of my neighbours now than I ever have. You know, it's like people looking after each other, making telephone calls, finding out how their neighbours are, if they need help. That's joyous to see. But that's how we naturally are as human beings, isn't it?
It is. It's the community I grew up in, and it's the one I want to keep living in too. Can I say a huge thank you to, well, first of all, to all of you for your questions, your discussions, and you know, you've really modelled a great way of doing that as well, respectful and listening and so on. A thanks to Clara and Alan in the background there, and Clara came to the foreground too and made a fabulous point. Biggest thanks of all, of course, to Davy and Chris. Fantastic discussion tonight, and yes, do join in anytime.
Okay.
As I've said, we're here every Thursday evening at the moment, so the more of you coming along the more the discussion will be rich and thought-provoking and reflective. And bring your pals, especially bring your pals who are just in that phase of thinking about independence. Let them hear the discussions, let them contribute to it. That's what we want to do.
I wish I did have some pals that were confused, but I don't. I don't know any no voters that I would call pals. And also Chris and I are privileged to live in a yes city. Resoundingly voted yes. It's very difficult to find no voters around here, which is a joy on one level, but you do want to reach out to those no's.
Yeah.
And get them to maybes, and then the maybes to the yeses.
Well, you know, I'm in the borough, so there's a wee bit more work to be done here, guys. So come back with that play, please.
Okay, boss.
And can I say, just before I hand over to Davy, we're a civic organisation funded by no one apart from our supporters. So anything you can do to support the work we're doing, we'd very much value that. Now that may be in volunteering, it may be hosting your own discussions like this, because after all this is on Zoom. And you could do some in your own communities and wherever, but also any money that you can put in the pot in whatever way you can afford. And we know that some folk are really ill-placed to be giving their money away just now, quite understand that. But if you've got a bit of spare money in your pocket from lockdown, as some of us ended up having, then, you know, then let's, maybe you could throw some of that in our direction, because we're desperately in need of it. So I, on that note, want to hand back over to Davy, speaking Chris's words and his own words. And this is from The Pitiless Storm, is that right?
This is the final speech, the final sort of 2.5 pages from The Pitiless Storm. Chris he's fiddled with it a little bit. But yes, this is the one that you saw, Audrey.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to the back of the room now, because we're going to get a little bit of fiddle in here, and people think I'm moving back so it doesn't sound too loud, but really I just don't want Ali Bain stealing my tricks.
He still will. So you're fine, Chris, and I just kick off. Okay. Why not this little piece of land rather than another one, a bigger one? This wee piece of land makes some sense without all that baggage, trying to be a superpower, G8, G20, NATO, the weight of history keeping empire alive. You guys don't need me to tell you we played our part in all that too. It wasn't a big boy that done it and ran away. But I think we're ready to say sorry and move on. And we're no hacking the land apart at Carlisle. We're no abandoning anyone. We're not going anywhere. We'll still be here. But here, in this wee bit of land, we could do things differently. And if it works, and surely to God we can give it a try, then we can lead by example. Our comrades in England and Wales and Ireland, we can be an inspiration. Because right now, we're the last hope in these islands of defeating the destructive force of pitiless capital. It's fallen to us in this little corner of a garden we've been given to cultivate, to keep alive the best of the country formerly known as Great Britain. Stay and everything we thought was great about it will be gone forever. Fairness, equality, humanity. We're no leaving, they are. We're not leaving a union, we're joining the world. Do I have my doubts? Me? Fuck aye, I'm your man for the doubting. None of us can tell the future. But we do have a damn good idea how things will turn out if we don't make a change. The rich will get richer, the poor poorer, more wars, and we'll still tread the same paths we trod generation after generation, never achieving what we set out to when we were younger and bolder. I'm not insisting you agree with me. God, we're people of independent mind. We have a responsibility to think things through for ourselves. All I'm asking is I'm allowed to think again, reassess, and that you'll accept that change as the result of honest thought. If you decide otherwise, I'm not going to fall out with you. If you decide to say no, then I'll accept you've come to a different conclusion with honesty and integrity too. But me, I've had it up to here with no. I want to start saying yes again. Yes to this place, to this time, to us here. Yes to mad wee land of Covenanters and Catholics, Jews, Hindus, hippies, Muslims, wee frees, big frees, middle-sized frees, Buddhists and schismatics and socialists. All of us argy-bargying our way through scones and Dundee marmalade. Red Clydesiders, rubbing boiler suit shooters with our manny yuppies. There's even the odd Tory if you look hard enough. Pan-drop sooking grannies, black affronted by everything they see out their windows. Ministers of the kirk, sweetie wifies, golfers, hikers and pipers and hip-hoppers. All of us here gain it loudy, rowing and disputating to our heart's content. Yes to you, Ethel, wherever you are and whoever you're with, to your paper roses and your yellow broom and your moo-coos and baby tuckoo. Ethel, wherever you are, via con Dios hen, I love you. Maybe see you along the way. Friends, yes to being 17 inside our heads, to all the mad ideas and wild hopes, yes to the sadness round our eyes, to all the words we've ever spoken that never go away but float in the air. All these words swirling around inside my head. Right now it's my ma talking, and she's telling me the story. There was a mango seller long ago, son, and he came all the way from Multan Sahiwal to the Hebridean Islands, traipsing single-track roads and knocking on doors, laden with sweet fruits and bunches of coriander. When Ranjit speaks Punjabi now, he does it with a soft Hebridean lilt, and when he speaks the Gaelic, you can hear the spice and warmth of a far-flung land. His daughter married a man from Glasgow. The mango seller's daughter taught the incomer Gaelic and love, and they sing ghazals in Gaelic to a Bhangra beat. Welcome to my great wee Scotland, with its thistles and ragged edges and uncertainties. Christ, we don't even know what the weather will be like in half an hour, let alone what the whole country will be like in a decade. But it'll be shaped by us, with our values and our humanity. On this autumn night, we're no madmen. We're just trying to be the best we can, give ourselves a wee chance, a once-in-a-lifetime chance, an empire of the hearth and the heart. The world's not going to fall apart. We're just taking responsibility for who we were, who we'll be, who we can be. So come on, say aye, si, oui, da, ya, ta, okay. Just say yes, aye, fair dues, all right, how no, affirmative, gear a spin, have a go, a crack, a shot. 3, 2, 1, yes!
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was, I'm greeting here, so I find it hard to find the words. That was fabulous and spoke for so many of us here.
Sorry for my little fluffs. It's how many years since we've done that? Gosh, anyway.
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
I didn't notice them. I didn't notice them. Thank you.
A pleasure, Audrey, a pleasure. Thank you for inviting us. It was a privilege.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace and love, everybody.
Bye.